Hello and welcome to the MB Om podcast, where you will learn to master the business of yoga with guests from around the world who have experienced becoming successful yoga teachers, studio owners, and much more. Now, here's your host, Amanda Kingsmith.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the MB Om podcast. Today I have a really cool guest on who is a teacher in the Atlanta area and somebody that I've met since my time spent in Georgia and in the southern U.S. And something about coming down to the U.S. for an extended period of time that a lot of people don't know is that I was actually really nervous about not finding a yoga studio that I was going to click with. I had such a good yoga studio and yoga community back home that was one of the hardest things to leave behind. And when I got here, I found a studio that felt pretty homey to me, and I started going to a bunch of teachers' classes. And I went to Katie's class, and I was immediately intrigued by her teaching style. I loved the way that she presented herself in classes. I felt like I could learn from her. And I kind of just kept going, and then we got to know each other. We started chatting after class. We became Instagram friends. We went for coffee and realized that we have so many things in common, from love of travel to an obvious love of yoga, growing up sort of similarly, taking sort of similar life paths. And so when I decided to start the MB Om podcast, I thought that Katie would be a really cool guest to have on because she's about a year and a half, almost 2 years into being a full-time yoga teacher. So for a lot of you new yoga teachers out there who are listening, this might be your path and your journey and might be what you do for the first few years in your career. So I think it's really cool to hear sort of what it's like and the ups and downs of it, and just talking about all sort of aspects of being a yoga teacher. So without further ado, here's Katie.
All right, Katie, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. This is a pretty cool experience for me because I've never done an interview in person. So you're my first person.
This is so cool.
Yeah, person-to-person interview.
It's a good thing we've practiced together for a while because we're like, yeah, yoga. This is what we do after every class, is talk about yoga anyways.
Yeah, I come to Katie's classes and then I kind of have her around for like an hour, taking up her time talking about
which I'm totally fine with.
So the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast today is because you have a pretty cool background, which as somebody who has done the university, corporates, onto travel, yoga thing, I feel like you and I are super similar in that way.
For sure.
So what was it that you were doing before becoming a yoga teacher?
Directly before, I was working retail, and retail for me just started out as I need a job quick. I have an art and a music background, so that was never quite enough to teach music and, play symphonies and whatnot. And so I was like, I just need to get a part-time job. I got a part-time job, and I loved the company that I worked for. I worked for Teavana. And I absolutely loved this tea culture and this idea that you can kind of be in a store and sort of travel through the experience of the store, because they had so many different imports and cool things tied to the tea culture. And it just immediately got into that love that I have for travel. So I ended up being really, really good at it and being able to sell the product really, really well. And it also fed something that I like for organizing and leading people right up to the top. Kind of basically is how it went. I became a store manager, and then I went to corporate, and they moved me out to Atlanta from where I was living in Texas. So it happened really, really fast, but it happened looking back on it, it all happened at such a perfect timing for what needed to happen in my life. Yeah. To have those experiences.
That's cool. Sure. And then from there, you went overseas.
Yeah, when I was moved out to Atlanta, the job was for an international manager, a training position. And they said, basically, you're going to be Atlanta-based, but you're going to have no time in the office. And I was like, yes, this is amazing. I was so shocked that I got the job in the first place. There were a lot of people higher up than me that I knew had interviewed for it, and I interviewed for it for the experience and for the slim possibility, as I saw it, that I would get the position. And I got the position, moved out, and pretty much traveled nonstop for a good solid year and a half, and was constantly over. My area was in the Middle East, so anywhere from like the Persian Gulf. I opened stores in Dubai, 3 stores in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, which is the capital of the United Arab Emirates. Kuwait was where our franchise operator was located out of, so I'd fly into Kuwait a lot and work with them. Bahrain, which is in the Gulf, right off the coast of Saudi, so you get a really interesting like mix of Saudis coming over, and then the people that get to party in Bahrain because it's not Saudi and they can take their clothes off and get excited. And then my favorite place that I went to was Beirut, Lebanon, which is culturally so different from the Gulf, and it just was awesome.
Yeah.
Loved it.
And so, I mean, obviously, I've talked to you about this before, and like I can see your face lighting up when you talk about these experiences. At what point did it become like, I need out of this? Like, I need to change?
It was a workload. It was never the place. It was never the travel. It was never the people. I made so many friends over there that I still talk to, you know, on WhatsApp, that we still shoot each other texts and say things, and remember each other's like birthdays or when we open stores together. So it's a really sweet connection I still have to that part of the world. But there was just, I knew that the job wasn't going to last forever. The company was bought out by Starbucks. I knew that things were going to change. I knew that the structure was just going to get a little iffy, and then I needed to have a backup plan. And the backup plan that was offered to me was not one that I wanted to take. There were kind of 2 different roads, 2 different forks in the road, sort of go back to U.S. structure, corporate management, which I had already done, didn't like at all.
Yeah, that's fair.
There was either that, and it was very similar benefits, which were not bad, but it wasn't like enough to be something that was attractive to me. And then the other of living overseas and living in Kuwait. And I was very fortunate that, you know, the relationship that I was in, that I'm still in, and just being in a relationship and being with someone that was patient to let that happen and let me travel as much as I did, to have that support system, I didn't want to blow it. Like, I just knew that I had to prioritize, and I was like, I can't live in Kuwait and I'd adopted a dog.
Yeah.
It's my first rescue, and I was, there's no way, you know, I can spend time with my little family unit and do this. And family is so huge to me, since I'm not close to the family that I was born into. So the family that I have now is so big for me that I have to prioritize. I have to get out of this, and if I don't get out when it's good, it's going to shift, which it did, and it won't look as good. I won't be at the top when I get out. You know? Now I feel like I was able to prioritize and say, I want to work on family, and I want to work on me, and I want to stop going for like 60 days straight, which I did before, without taking a day off.
That's so mental.
It's brutal.
Crazy.
You don't even know how brutal until you finish it, and you're like, my whole body is dead. Like, I would have these weeks where I would come back to the States, and I would do nothing but like eat and just be still.
Like, you have to give your body that like love and nourishment and that rest,
because nobody would do it for you. And I was too much, and still am to a certain extent, too much of an achiever to understand the lesson of pacing myself, which I think is why, you know, yoga ties into this. Yoga was so important to help me, make me, in a sense, learn those lessons. Because I just pushed too hard.
No, definitely. That I can definitely relate to that. And so you had been practicing yoga while you were traveling, sort of like before that period, or when did yoga really become a part of your life?
Well, I've always loved movement. I did gymnastics as a kid. I have like somewhere in an album, photo album, there's a picture of me in basically tripod headstand, and I was like 5 or 6, and I was just playing with being upside down, and I'm up against the wall, and I've got like, I don't know, My Little Pony t-shirt on. It's like very much like 92. But yeah, I just remember always being fascinated by what I know now as yoga. Fascinated by movement and and the splits are just this fun sort of dancey thing. And I thought, I really like this. I've done it as I was traveling. I would practice in my hotel rooms. It was never anything fancy or like an external practice. In fact, the first time I went to a class, an actual class, a colleague of mine, I was in Kuwait, and there's a lot of British, UK folks out there working, and they have a very Western, British-led, like, club.
Yeah.
And it's right on the Gulf, and there's all these beautiful places that the windows are open in the club, and you can be taking yoga, and it can be like 120 Fahrenheit, like 48°C, and you're just like, yay, I'm in air conditioning and I'm going to take yoga. So that's what we did. She took me to a class. It was the first class I'd ever taken. The instructor was British, and she was like, I love your knickers. And I was like, oh, I like my knickers too. They're so awesome. It was the first time like someone had complimented my yoga clothes, and I was like in this groupiness, and it felt really good. It felt like this is a cool community around the world.
Yeah. And
I've been doing this stuff on my own as a private practice, but how cool if I could, be more a part of it. And I like teaching. I've taught in one way or another, from training people to, again, teaching music, that I was like, I don't know, maybe I should just try it. It was kind of a goal that I put out there.
Yeah, like just give it a shot and see how it goes.
Like, we'll just see. Something will happen. It's like, whatever. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. But that was the first and the only class I had taken at that point, publicly. And then I did take classes back in Atlanta before I decided like where I wanted to do my training.
Yeah. And then, so you did your training like 2 years ago now, or?
Yeah, almost 2 years ago. I would have been in training at this point 2 years ago, and I finished like May or June of 2014.
Cool. So just about 2 years ago then.
Right.
And you've been like full-time yoga teacher since then.
Yeah, I hit the ground running. It's kind of almost a joke now with my fiance and I. He's always like, everything you do, you just go full force, but then I stop, and then I reevaluate, and then I start a new career, and then I go full force. It's sort of a pattern that's starting to even itself out, luckily, with yoga. But yeah, I graduated, and I remember the weekend that I was graduating, a couple of days before we actually got our certificates, the owner of the studio where I did my teacher training, he called me up and was like, hey, I need someone to sub on a Tuesday night, like literally 2 days after you graduate, and I trust you, would you teach a gentle yoga class? And I'm like, okay, sure. I don't know how to say no to that. I had no idea what gentle yoga really meant. I knew it meant slower, and I don't know, it's just every time you look back, you think, gosh, I didn't really know anything. Those poor people, 90-minute class of gentle, and we were probably like wiggling our fingers and stretching our wrists because I just ran out of material. But yeah, it started like that, and then I got on a couple other sub lists, and it's amazing how just 2 or 3 sub lists, if you're hungry and you're ready to work, you can book out your calendar, as you know, because you sub. And so I started booking out my calendar, and then I started auditioning at places, and then they'd be like, so-and-so left, can you take so-and-so's class? And I was always, yes, 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 and it built, and I'm at like 5 studios now.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a pretty like cool journey that you've had.
Yeah, it's always cool looking back on it, because you think, I would have never thought I would be doing this. Never in a million years. I thought it was a cool idea, and I might be that kind of like trendy, neat lady that had a career and then taught like one class on the weekends for fun, just so she could tell her friends, yeah, I teach yoga, I'm a yoga instructor.
Justify the fun yoga.
Yeah, exactly, and to get the discounts or whatever.
So for people who are coming out with a teacher training, I think like one of the biggest things that holds people back is fear.
Oh yeah.
It's like this fear of like, I don't know enough, or I don't know what to do. And how did you sort of overcome that fear?
I'm really stubborn. That's kind of, I still have that. I think you never really get rid of that in one sense or another, and it's good. It's sort of like, I liken it to performance anxiety that I would have before, auditions playing piano. I would get so incredibly nervous. And it wasn't a nervousness about being in front of people or all this other stuff. It was about, can I do as good as I want to do, the expectation I've set. So yoga is I still have that, and I still kind of like, oh, is it going to be good enough? Is it going to be... But yoga's just tempered that, because you just get out there and you start... Every class I teach, I just think I'm learning more and more and more about what I don't know. So it's humbling. I don't know. It's kind of like learning that process in reverse.
Yeah.
You keep thinking, I'm going to get this or I'll get that, or maybe you even set a goal, but the more you learn, the more you know you don't know.
Yeah.
And you're in a community that is either already there with you, realizing that they don't know that much and they just want to be a part of this movement, or they're curious and they're looking up to you, which is really cool, because you think, well, I can be there for that person that was me 2 or 3 years ago and be that whatever, even if it's just a listening ear to kind of pull them along and say, hey, come on, we got this. Don't worry, set aside your fear.
Yeah.
And it takes that village of yogis.
Yeah, definitely.
Because people did it for me. I had people that were, no, you're fine. Don't worry about it. That's not what it's about. So I guess I just relied on the handful of people I really trusted, and I took advice, and I go with my gut all the time to overcome that fear. If there's a place that's just still not feeling right 3-4 years or 3-4 months down the road, I'll let go of it. And that's something I would have never done with my old corporate self. I would have hung on for dear life and made it work.
Yeah.
But yoga's just taught me to let go of that. But you just put yourself out there and you see what places resonate with you. Certain studios that I'm at now resonate way more than others.
Yeah,
we have to eat, so so we keep some of them that don't resonate and know that we're there for maybe just one person.
Yeah.
And as a new teacher, there's always going to be people that don't like what I teach, and that's fine. I've had people walk out on classes before, and that's fine too. If I'm not the teacher you need to be taking from, I respect that now, and I don't see it as a personal failure.
Yeah.
I just see it as, they need to take from someone else, just like I can't take from everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
was that hard for you to sort of like deal with at first?
It was. As a perfectionist, very type A personality, and being raised to be like, do the best you absolutely can at everything, and then it still isn't good enough. Having that inner dialogue of constantly do better, and then hold on tight and kind of like shake everything into place and make it work. It was really hard. That's why I think I needed it. And that's why I think I needed to do everything prior to this to get to a point where, I don't know, I've actually even heard, I don't know who it was that said it, probably some teacher in Atlanta that I've taken from. He said that yogis and yoga teachers in particular are usually the most type A, most...
Interesting.
Yeah, the most driven sort of personalities, and they come to it, and it can completely change and transform them, of course, as it does for all of us. But they come to it because they're the ones that need it most.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that, even though we don't feel like it a lot of days, like we're teachers or leaders or anything, we can be just by being ourselves and not giving into that perfectionism. By being and showing other people that it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, if I can do it, you got this.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm definitely more on the type A side.
Yeah.
So that resonates with me for sure. And so you were saying how, like, you got on the sub list for a bunch of different places. What was that process sort of like? Like, did you go to those studios, talk to the studio owners? Did you know, like, people or...
It's a little bit of both for me. I was proactive to begin with. Like I said, that first opportunity was sort of handed to me from the studio I took my training at. But other than that, I've been very proactive. I've gone out, I've talked to people. I've said, hey, I recently graduated. I don't even know if you... And I also very much some studios don't want new teachers, and I get that too. So I'd say, hey, I don't even know if, you have a prerequisite if you want your teachers to have been teaching for at least a year, which you will see a lot. And then what your narrowed down places are.
Yeah.
And then from there, there are places that I practice. There are places that, quite honestly, because I'm on a pretty tight budget, there's things I would find Groupons to.
Yeah.
I'd find a Groupon and be like, 8 classes for $30. I'm going to do that. And then just see what the other teachers were like, what the studio felt like, if it felt good, even after that class pack was up. I would present myself in like an email form to the studio owner and say something along the lines of, I'm new, but I've been practicing at your studio and I really like the energy. And it's kind of a soft approach of saying, I like your studio to begin with.
Yeah.
And I can see myself here. Would you, or do you need someone on your sub list?
Yeah.
And then from there, the second half of it is, as you get past that tough, first year of doing all the proactive stuff,
Yeah.
then people will start to approach you. I've had other teachers in my classes, and they'll say, or other studio owners in my classes, I really liked your style. And if they resonate with you, and then they're like, hey, I have a studio up in wherever.
Yeah.
Do you want to come by and do an audition? And that is, being open to that. Being willing to drive, at least for the first year or so, before you kind of get your roots down and people know you. So
yeah, let's get into that a little bit. What is your sort of day-to-day like as a yoga teacher?
I try to get up at the same time, but I'm a lot easier on myself than I used to be. And if I need to rest, I'll find rest. Even now, if I need to find a sub and take time, I'll do that. But typically, day to day, it's such a simple, quiet life peppered with a lot of little bursts of energy is how I see it. And I get up, I drink my tea. I'm still a tea fanatic. I have 3 rescued dogs. We always spend time together. There's always dog walks and that kind of stuff going on. But I would say generally throughout the day, whether I have a morning class, a noon class, a private, and then an evening class, or if I have one class or no classes, I work pretty much every day.
Yeah.
And that's something that not everyone knows unless they're on this path.
Yeah.
They don't understand the amount of time. Trying to talk to the parents back home, they're like, oh, you're not working today? And I'm like, I am, but I'm not. I'm always hungry for more information. And I'm always hungry for reading a new book, finding a new yogi, looking at an online class, seeing someone else's perspective. If I like something I see, jotting it down or making a mental image of it. So there is this sense that the yoga teacher is constantly a student and you're constantly in research mode. And that's work. That's an office job. That's a 9 to 5 for the average person that gets up and does emails and gets online and because all information in one way or another is already used, you know. So in a way, you're just accumulating the information, taking what's good for you, and then kind of spitting it back out.
Yeah, that's interesting. This, because I'm such a fan of being a constant life learner, and I think that it's one of the things that I think is really important. Is becoming a yoga teacher doesn't mean that you get to stop practicing, and becoming a yoga teacher with a 200 level certificate doesn't mean that you get to stop learning about yoga.
No. And there's plenty of people that I know of that they're not even registered with Yoga Alliance, and they might teach privately, they don't teach publicly. There's plenty of people that I also know of that have ERYT 500s or are working on their 1,000 or their yoga therapy, and they don't teach, so there's different forms that it can come in, for sure. For me and what I've chosen to do just as my livelihood, I know that it needs to stay pretty rhythmically kind of hopping along, but I do take time if I need to get away from it. And I always make time for my own practice. I don't know if it's just my personality and I have a tendency to guilt, but if I don't practice, I feel like the shittiest teacher ever. I'm out here and I'm like, be in your body, listen, give yourself time. And I'm like, you piece of shit, you didn't practice. it's bad, you know, it's kind of a negative internal.
It's not very much self-love.
But it's like, I have to know that I'm at least committing to what I'm asking of people, at least. And then maybe on the days that my body is physically up to it, giving a little more so I can get outside the comfort zone. And that's where, you know, like going on workshops, going to Yoga Journal conference, going to, you know, Sean Corn in Cuba or wherever, you know, whatever you can do. And it doesn't have to be that. It could be a local teacher up the road doing an alignment class or a restorative on a weekday night that you would have never normally given yourself time for unless you just book it. And just book it and get there and don't worry about the outcome.
Yeah. Has your self-practice always come really naturally to you? Because I know I've talked to you about this, but self-practice is so difficult for me. Like, you would have been proud I self-practiced yesterday, and I thought of you. I was like, yes, I did 40 minutes.
It's hard, especially if you're, like, watching the clock, and you're like, I've only done 15?
That's, like, actually what happened at first, and I was like, Amanda, just let it go. Like, you're just on the mat, you're having fun. But it's so much easier for me to get out of my head when somebody else guides me.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, when I'm guiding myself, all of a sudden I'm, like, trying to do all these cool poses that, like, really don't even matter. And I'm like, why am I just doing handstands?
There's so much truth to what you just said, though, of, like, letting go of the time has been huge for me. Even last year, January, I had set a goal to be, like, an Ashtanga yoga. Yeah. I was totally going to Ashtanga it up. I was going to do Ashtanga. I was going to go to Mysore. I was going to practice. And I had been playing with primary series at home, so I felt like, oh, I can just go to Mysore and be good. And then my schedule even got a little bit more fat, you know? Everything just got bolstered up, and there wasn't time for that. And I probably guilted over that until March or April of last year. Wow. I was just like, why did I tell this person I was going to come to Mysore? And the Mysore teacher would email me and be like, so here's another nudge, come to class. And I just felt so bad that I hadn't followed through with it. But as you said, once you let go of the time, it's not really like what it looks like, what type of yoga it is, just some time in the day to be mindful. And now that I've done it, the practice has actually gone up in actual time, whatever that means, and in quality, because I've let go of that. But I guess it's hard, but it's also easier for me because I'm constantly in studios. I really enjoy the space to be and do my own thing, and I love online yoga. Online yoga is awesome. You can just put it on. Half the time I'll watch it and then be like, oh, that was cool. Pause, get on the mat, do 20, 30 minutes. And depending on, you know, what day it is and how I feel, I might just run through a few sun salutes with some hip openers, something just to get the kinks of, like, having been in a car and in and out of studios all day, get that out, and then just take a long shavasana.
That sounds nice.
Yeah, and let it be what it is. And then I'll notice your body's just so smart, it'll give you the little hints. So for me, if I go kind of doing my own thing and not really pushing myself for, say, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then I go to a class, I'll notice, like, if I'm starting to lose strength. And if that's important to me to build it back up, well, then I start taking those classes that are strength building, so I don't lose the things that I've sort of worked for. But it's not always important to me. Sometimes I'm just like, I just need to sleep. So then it's different.
Yeah, it's cool that you're able to, like, tune into your body so much. I think that's, like, a really incredible thing.
Yeah, yoga has really done it for me. It's interesting, too, because I've always felt pretty in touch with, like, my body. I grew up doing, you know, alternative therapies and, like, homeopathy and herbs anytime I was sick. So being, like, noticing when something's not right and kind of acting on it with natural remedies and therapies comes pretty easily to me. But with the yoga, you'll notice just the slightest thing that I maybe didn't notice before, that I would push through and say, oh, it's weakness. Don't need weakness. And now it's like, oh, what is this? And why is this showing up? And it's not even in a negative way. It's just like, what is this? And why is my left ankle sore? And why is my left toe sore when I jump back in chaturanga? Like, I this is interesting. Let me try something else and modify around it. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that inspires me to be on my mat at home more.
Good. It doesn't work for everyone. I think if I were just taking classes and I had like a full-time job and this was not my full-time job, I'd be so different about it. I would need to be in a studio, and I still need people to take over. Mm-hmm. I can't always be in my own head. I drive myself crazy.
Yeah.
I have to have times where I'm like, please, I don't care what you teach. Just speak. Just say something and don't let me speak. So.
Yeah, it's sort of this interesting, like it kind of depends on where you are with your life. Like I find since I work from home, sometimes like the yoga studio is the only time that I'm like really feel like I'm in a community, because sometimes you can be still so alone in a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Even if you're like working there, or if I'm just at home, I really am alone because I don't have a pet with me keep me entertained.
Yeah.
So it's this nice form of community, but sometimes it is nice to just like do what you want to do and practice what you want to practice.
Yeah, that's a really good point though too. I have a lot of clients that they work from home and they need to be in a studio to just create balance in their life, because they're always home and they're always on by themselves on the computer, you know. So it's a good point.
Yeah, it's a lot.
One size does not fit all with yoga. You've got to do your own thing.
Yeah. I think it's cool too to find a balance between like taking classes from other teachers and then as a teacher like practicing your own sequences, like feeling into your body to find like different things to do.
And the ones that the ones that I usually can't stand when I'm actually taking from them, or I feel like it's not the right thing, it's usually the class I needed to be in to get out of trying to control the class. You know? And that's when all this is not all physical that you notice in yoga, as you know. It might just be a mental state where I'm in like a higher control mode, where I'm thinking I'm on top of my classes, things are going well, and those are the days that you get that one teacher that's just gonna hold you forever and like warrior two, and you're like, can you please do something else? Is this the only pose you know or something? Like, and then that critical is it's shown up for a reason. It's something that I don't like in myself that I need to learn to deal with.
Yeah.
So it's cool. It's all good.
No, it's interesting when you kind of like, as a practitioner, when you like let a teacher just guide you and you do whatever.
And you just stop thinking about her cues are really jacked up. Yeah, because you know someone's going to do that for you. It just builds a very universal compassion for other people's ways of being and expressing themselves.
Yeah.
And that it's all good for your body. Like, let's be real. Any time spent on the mat is good for your body.
Yeah, definitely.
If it's not good for you, whatever he or she is doing, then you modify. And that's exactly what we tell our students anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So you teach at 6 studios in Atlanta, right?
5 currently.
5. So you spend a lot of time going between different places then.
Me and my car, we're like road warriors. I love my car. She's been so many places with me. Long distance and short distance. But yeah, I talk to my car. I listen to a lot of music. I have multiple yoga mats in my car. There are different degrees of like deterioration too. Yeah. It's like this one I'm attached to, this one's newer. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Probably need like a box of snacks and like extra sports bras.
Exactly. There's always the days where they're the really early morning classes and you're like, I'm not super concerned what people think, but I do wonder, like, do I smell? Because I know I taught a hot class yesterday and I know I didn't shower. Is it okay to recycle yoga clothes? Yeah, I'll be fine. They won't notice. So yeah, it's a little like a little quick change studio, like an artist or an actor would have. You kind of have your snack and your whatever and your music figured out and got your iPad and yeah.
What's that sort of like when you leave your house? Do you have any days where you leave and you're like all day at different studios and you don't get home till like...
It's depending on, because we live in Atlanta. Traffic is insane.
The city's massive.
Yeah. And it just depends on the flow of traffic. If I know I can make it home, especially because I do have pets, I'm pretty much going to go home if I have a window. Yeah. Even if it means kind of a couple extra miles. I want to get home and let them have a chance to get outside and have fresh air. So that's something that does motivate me to kind of break it up more. and I'm grateful for that because it does help me get through the day. But I do have days where I'm gone all day, and I'll have little pit stops in between. Whole Foods. Whole Foods pitch. I'm like, yes, I have enough time to go to Whole Foods Buckhead.
Oh my God, I spend way too much money at that hot food bar.
And it's so good. Like,
so good.
Everything that you could possibly want. Yeah. And if you need a juice, get a locally pressed juice or whatever if you can't eat right before a class, which is another thing. Trying to time meals is interesting.
Yeah.
And I like to eat healthy, and I'm vegan, so I need to make sure that I have quality sources of energy with me, and I'm not just living off of oxygen and green juice, because then Chaturanga is not going to happen. It's just not.
Yeah, I know, I'm gluten-free, so it's, one of those things where when you choose not to eat something or you can't eat something, you don't just stop. And I mean,
yeah,
I don't see either of us stopping at a gas station and grabbing a bag of Doritos, but
it's had to happen a few places in the Deep South, but it's never been pretty.
Sometimes you're really hungry.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's there's a lot of preparation in that.
Yeah, there is. I spend most of my time between yoga and food. If I had to boil it down, it'd be yoga, food, and dogs. That's it. It's that's my trifecta. But yeah, preparation, taking food with you, prepping it the night before, even when you're tired, or knowing what places are in your route. And we're so lucky with the big city. There's a lot of places to stop and eat. It's just managing the finance of how expensive prepared food is.
Yeah, I mean, I can go a little crazy at that Whole Foods hot bar.
Every time I go in, I'm like, how did I spend $20 on lunch? This is not cool. I should be able to have a $5 lunch and keep it in line, but no. And then on the way out, I'm like, oh, there's a scarf. Why are there scarves at Whole Foods?
I don't know. And they cost so much money.
And soap. A new scent of soap.
Yeah, my average for the hot food bar is $12.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'll get an Arden's Garden.
Oh, yeah.
Or something like
and
that.
And then they're $17.49 when you check out. And you're like, damn it.
And then I'm like, okay, you can only eat half your hot food bar meal right now.
The other half is for dinner. Right.
It's $17
I know.
for a meal. It just seems way too much.
Yep. I hear you.
That's kind of an interesting point, though, getting to spending money on food. What's sort of the financial situation like as a full-time yoga teacher?
It is what you want it to be.
I guess
if I could simplify it, you kind of choose what's more important to you, depending on your personality and how you handle driving around and constant movement and just the stress of preparing classes. I feel like there's different ways you can do, and none of them are bad, but you could kind of plan classes and reduce your stress of having classes that are unplanned or more open structure. Or me, and the way I like to teach to that group of people. So it changes every day, which for me is a much bigger energy exchange. It's a much bigger output than doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There's plenty of teachers that do that and do really well and have their following. So that's your energy output. And when you have, for me, my energy output is directly tied to my finances. Because whatever I output, whatever I'm giving, if I'm giving too much, then I'm going to have to pull back. I get paid less. I can't take as many subs.
Yeah.
Is on top of my weekly, which is pretty full, I do take subs.
Yeah, you teach 11 classes regularly, right?
Regularly. And then, say last week, I taught closer to 20. And
that's crazy.
It was awesome. And I know I'm going to be like, ooh, paychecks.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not sustainable for me. Every time I do it, I swear I'll never do it again. But it comes along right at the time that I usually need it financially, and I just kind of bust it out and do it. But I don't prefer to live at that high of an energy output.
Yeah.
And I'm thankfully, blessed enough to be in a situation that I can pull back if I need to.
Yeah.
It's not all me.
Yeah.
Which is and I'm incredibly lucky in that sense. If you're on your own, you have to kind of pencil and paper how much is going to work for you, and then how else to cut down. And there's other ways that are even probably much smarter than what I'm doing right now. And I know that teaching workshops are much better as far as what you get out of them and the time that you spend. You might spend a lot of time on preparing, but you're there for one afternoon and you get paid much better for it. Mm-hmm. It's a much better energy to financial
ratio.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know quite a few yoga teachers who teach probably not as often or as much as you're teaching right now, but then they have a serving gig or something on the side, which is kind of that kind of brings enough money in. Yeah,
for sure.
Pays their rent, basic groceries, and then teaching yoga is this thing that gives them this extra cash, and they're getting this experience before they dive into it full time, I guess.
Exactly. If you have a job that you're decently happy at, don't quit it to be a yoga teacher. That would be my advice. It's just not the same. You can't do 9 to 5 and teach like that. You just can't.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone that can. I've talked to a guy, in fact, the guy that teaches in Mysore that I never went to. He used to do lead classes, and now he does it strictly Ashtanga Mysore style. But he's like, yeah, I remember. And he's probably right at 40 or a bit older. And he's like, I remember, being younger and doing 20, 25 classes a week. And I would be on the train or the MARTA, the mass transport or whatnot, and I would fall asleep standing. And that was my wake-up call at one point when I didn't know where I was, hardly knew who I was, and I was sleeping standing up, holding onto a rail. And it's brutal on your body because you might not be doing the practice, and I don't do a lot of practice when I teach. I try to keep it as verbal as possible to protect my own body. Mm-hmm. But I teach a lot of intermediates too. Yeah. And those are things that for most people, they're not going to get it unless they see the pose. So here I go, grasshopper or whatnot, and I'm cautious of having my practice in that day, but you're still wearing your body. So all that stuff factors in. And even what I'm doing now, I don't want to do this speed for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It just definitely works for now, and I'm getting enough payoff in that. I love the students that I have. I love the community that comes to my classes. I love the new people that I meet.
Yeah.
The people that are traveling because we live in a big city.
Yeah.
It's all good payoff right now. But, 5-10 years down the road, get another decade on my body, I might be like, no way.
Yeah. Yeah, I've talked to a few different yoga teachers now, and it's so interesting how everyone's path is so different. And it seems like the first few years as a yoga teacher, you kind of just put your time in.
Yeah, you do.
You drive a lot. You go to a lot of different studios.
Yeah, it's kind of trial by fire. It really is. Physically, mentally, and spiritually too, as you learn to deal with your energy input and output.
Yeah.
I would have never thought I would be saying stuff like that, but it's so true. The energy that you put out and the energy that you get back in, and that generally, not always, but generally there's a lot of people that will suck your energy, literally take it away, and they don't even know they're doing it. And that's something you're in constant contact with as a yoga teacher. Depressed people, overworked people, people traveling again, stuff that just becomes very palpable when you're teaching.
Yeah.
And it's intense.
You really get other people's stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I've heard in my teacher training, they said,
and you
protect your energy.
Whatever.
And I was
that's so stupid.
Do I get an invisibility glove? Because it's Harry Potter. I don't really know what you're talking about.
Yeah. You don't know it until you're right smack in the middle of it, which is part of the growing pains of being, as you said, a new yoga teacher and putting your time in, is you learn all this stuff by kind of experiencing it and almost hurting through it in a way. Once you know that you've gotten past that, you can tell the difference between when you're letting someone affect you and when you're not. And if I'm tired and my shield's already down because I'm just exhausted, it's going to affect me more, which goes back to giving myself enough time.
Yeah.
So it's all one big picture, everything. The food, the finance, the how much time you spend, what else is going on in your life. And then how can you kind of keep keep yourself up on your feet so that you're not teaching just for the money, because that also comes across in a class, I feel.
Yeah, people kind of like pick up on those things.
Oh yeah, if you're just meh, when you're teaching, as opposed to like, let's do this today because this is what I feel we need, or we're in the middle of class, let's change it. Let's be constantly open to this, evolution of what that group of people is going through that day. And it's completely unspoken.
Yeah, it's a lot too, like, for your mind and your body.
Oh yeah, it's memory work, which as a former musician, I love that aspect. I'm like, I'm going to memorize this exactly on the second side. And then I forget it, and then it's like, ego down. It's so cool. It's a brain exercise. It's a little bit of a brain twist when you're teaching. It's how do I communicate effectively?
Yeah.
How do I... make this come across in a way that is with as least amount of effort and with the least amount of words is effective. So they can stay internal, they can stay in their hearts and in their minds. That's just how I teach. It can be more physical for other people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, there's so many things you don't realize about what a yoga teacher is doing and thinking as you're in the practice, and then you start teaching and it's really like your mind is going in a million different directions.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just thinking back to like the first class I ever taught, it's just like I had my paper with my sequence there because I was terrified of forgetting.
Oh, yeah.
And then, but I didn't want to stand up and like lead the whole time. So then I'm trying to walk around and I'm trying to watch people's bodies because I think that alignment is so important.
Yeah, and then you think right in the middle of it, I better do a hands-on. So you run over to someone.
And I'm like, oh, I should touch them. And then I'm like, oh, where are we at? Okay, I'm still guiding this. And I'm like, okay, you need to like slow your mind down because you're going to run out of breath pretty quick here.
And then I do run out of breath, and then I'm like, deep breath. Let's just all breathe in child's pose right now. Let's make it sound intentional. We all need to breathe. Yeah. I've had a studio owner here, actually. She said, whenever I don't know what to do, I just make them do a vinyasa, and then I leave them. She's like, you've got to have that. And that's why I think, we talked about sun salutes earlier.
Yeah.
You have those things that you know really well, like the back of your hand, and you can always put them there, take a breath, pull it back together, and then be sensitive to what the room needs, as opposed to continuing whatever you thought you should do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you always just like stepped into a room and just like led the practice that way, or did you, when you first started, did you come up with your sequences?
When I first started, I led more with something that was premeditated, preconceived. I still, when I get moments of inspiration or from my own practice or again from an online class, I'll get out my little legal pad. I love that thing. And I'll just take pen and paper together and just start writing out what seems like it works. And usually writing it down once or twice. Again, I think it's the memory work that I have in my background. Just once or twice, and I can kind of commit it to memory and then pull it out and use it when I need to.
Yeah.
But I did start really more regimented, and that's how I was taught. That was the training, and the train of thought is to be very, very, very prepared. Write down your sequences, memorize them if you need to, know what comes first, how to properly sequence a class, and then with time you let go of that structure to a degree. You want to be safe. You're not going to start in like pigeon pose or anything, but to a degree.
Handstands today.
Shoulder stand, everyone, So you let go of it to a degree, but the safety aspect and the alignment aspect kind of is second nature at a certain point, because you know what does or doesn't work to start out with.
Yeah, definitely. That's cool. I think that's like good advice, because it's I feel like for me, I'm kind of like at this point where I'm like, okay, I'm probably like ready to start letting go of the like doing a sequence.
And you always will have the ones that you've learned. That's what's so cool about it is if you are having a low energy day, if the room is just not responding to all this fantastic, super wonderful chakra opening class that you came up with,
Yeah.
you can always go back to something that's sort of embedded in you.
Yeah.
And they don't know the difference. I really don't think they are that much the wiser for it. And again, maybe it was meant to happen, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe you needed to fall back on Sun A or Sun B, you
Yeah.
know? And those are, whenever that happens, and I think I've taught a really crappy, predictable class, is when I have people come up to me after class and be like, that was amazing. That was the best class. When else do you teach? And in my mind, I'm like, do you know what I just did? I totally just, fudged that class completely, and you loved it. This is great. It's fantastic.
I love that. That's hilarious.
It's fun.
It's like this difference of, you know, what you're feeling
Your
as a teacher for
expectation.
you're putting
Yeah.
out and what somebody else
totally.
is like experiencing.
Absolutely.
It's funny too because you could do like the best sequence class
Oh, yeah.
and be so happy with it, and somebody might hate it.
Oh, yeah. I've had really good, like, sequenced classes that end with yoga nidra, and I feel like they're just, you know, my ego's like, you are bordering on sublime today. You've got this. And that's when the people walk out. that's when I have, like, someone who can't wait to get out of Shavasana and leave and not even say bye, which is totally fine, you know. It
Yeah.
doesn't bother me. But, yeah, expectation is a big one. When you teach, just don't have them. And we'll probably always have them, but let go of it somewhere along the line in the flow of the class.
Yeah. Yeah, something I've been thinking about recently is I feel like sometimes there's people who show up for classes and it's, in my mind, they're not there for the right reason,
Yeah.
which is totally a judgment because people are completely entitled to show up to yoga for
Yeah.
whatever reason, like serves them
But I
or
hear
for
you.
whatever
You just
reason
see them
they
and you're
want.
like, oh no.
Yeah, I had that experience recently and I was just like, oh man, like I need to like contemplate this because it's like I don't want to be putting something that on her, but
That's
it's like,
not
you know,
there, yeah.
she's throwing her stuff back at me.
Right.
And it's just like this weird, like, I'm
Yeah.
like, why don't you just like listen and take it in and move slowly and like do yoga the way that I think you should be doing yoga.
It's frustrating. I think every teacher I've talked to, here and other places too, but we laugh about it and how we get so attached to the expectation on our students too.
Yeah.
As they come in and they start moving. And then there's the one where you're like, square your damn hips. You're going to hurt your lumbar spine. And they always will stack them every single time. And there's letting go of that. Like, you know, if they're meant to hurt their lumbar spine, they're meant to hurt their lumbar spine. They signed a waiver, I know, because I made them sign it. There's just a certain place where it's not my responsibility anymore. You do so much holding. We're not doctors. We're not even, you know,
Chiropractors.
body workers. We're not even a massage therapist. They have a lot more hours than we do if we want to look at it that way. So
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting too when you say that with like squaring your hips because I feel like sometimes maybe it's like not even the awareness. Like I know I've had people adjust me and I'm like, whoa, was I doing that with my body?
why did my whole body move? What did you do to me? Yeah.
Like my hips just like to swing out in all sorts of directions.
Yeah, me too.
Just like how they are. I feel like it's flexibility plus
Yeah.
like the woman, the way our pelvis is shaped.
Yeah, someone adjusts you and it's you get plugged back in, but it feels so different.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like this, like, I mean, I'm pretty aware of my body, but I'm definitely not perfect. And I feel like there's some people who have way less awareness. And it's like you're cueing and you're like, why aren't you listening to
I
me?
know.
Just freaking do it.
Everyone's at such a different point with that. Even just right and left can be a really big deal for someone coming to yoga. Awareness of what is my foot doing behind me that I can't see.
Yeah.
So just complete peripheral awareness is huge, and we take that for granted. Or I know I do a lot of times because I've been practicing for a while.
Yeah, and especially growing up with like a gymnastics background. Like,
Yeah,
I grew up dancing.
body awareness.
So
Exactly. You know you're right and you're left pretty much some days. Some days mine still gets all kinds of interesting. But yeah, for the most part, you know, depending on your background, you might be way more aware of your physical body than, you know, Joe Smith that comes in with a wrestling background that only knows force and you know, contraction, the body, concentric contraction. They don't know about stretching the muscle
yeah.
contraction and how that is just as hard, if not harder, if you haven't done it.
Yeah, definitely. We had some when I worked at Lululemon in Banff, we had like sort of this deal with like the CrossFit people going for a little bit, where they'd come to
We
yoga,
have that here too.
and we'd go to CrossFit, and like he'd like big CrossFit dudes, like 12-pack would
Super
teach
ripped.
these like little Lululemon yogis how to lift weights properly, and then they'd come to yoga, and it was so interesting watching, like just pouring sweat and downward facing dog. I'm like, how is this hard for you? Like you lift such heavy weights.
Oh yeah.
But it's like, you know, the shoulder mobility is not there. It's just so interesting.
Absolutely. And interestingly enough, recently, sort of over the phone, I've been working with my dad. He's had sciatica flare up. He's 63 years old. He's had an office job his whole life.
Yeah.
And here he is at the end of his career, and he's starting to let go of like the office job and the tension a little bit.
Yeah.
This is going to take some time. But stuff is bubbling to the surface, and so I'm just like telling him how to do like supine pigeon on his back, or legs up the wall, or just anything to reverse blood flow.
Yeah.
But that body and that, you know, that lifestyle, that's going to be layers and layers of stuff to work through.
Yeah.
Just like you said with the CrossFit dudes, and they're so strong in ways that we aren't.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's no way. And then, you know, the sprints and the tire rolling and all that stuff they do.
Those big heavy ropes.
Right. I'm like, no. I probably should be more interested in the strength aspect, but which is another point, just the balance. That just because you do yoga doesn't mean you're balanced.
Yeah.
Physically or mentally or spiritually.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
all process.
Bringing up balance, how do you find, like, as a yoga teacher, you find balance, like, in your life between, like, teaching and your personal life, like, finding time to spend time with, like, your fiance, your friends?
Right. The biggest one for me is to make sure I practice. I know that sounds so stereotypical. Even when I say it, I'm like, really? But it is. If I don't practice that day, I'm less present to my fiance. I'm less present to the people that need me that day. Friends, family, whatever. Most everything's long distance for me, so whatever's coming across the phone, you know?
Yeah.
How can I be present to that? And the quality of the presence, it goes up if I've practiced.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how long and what form, but if I've practiced, that quality goes significantly up.
Yeah.
I'm more present to myself. I do things more mindfully. I don't get irritated as easily. It just kind of washes my nervous system.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that's why I make that a priority. It's kind of like we have a balance now in my household of like he gets up and takes the dogs out in the mornings. He doesn't have to be up and work early, and I know that I've got a certain amount of time to say start a load of laundry, get that running, and then hit the mat. You know, so that kind of two things are being done at once, but it's never like I'm starting to do the whole day just yet.
Yeah.
I might start something that I can step away from, and then I get to the mat. And that's the biggest thing for me. If I don't do that, I can't, you know, my mom calls and it's, you know, some long conversation that normally I wouldn't want to be patient with. If I haven't practiced, I notice that I have to like start breathing deeply and kind of tune into what I need to do to stay present to that. But if I practice, there's kind of more an automatic, like I'm in the groove, you know, everything's kind of on the train tracks a little better.
Like it's not as, like life isn't quite as overwhelming if you've like kind of tuned into yourself.
Yes, and I come from a long line of high-strung people. So I kind of feel that is my keystone. That's what I go back to.
Yeah.
For a daily thing to find practice. And then to find balance, I mean. And then it's a lot of other stuff. It's a lot of little things like having little rituals throughout the day that feed me. They're not really for anyone else. They're for me. And it can be as simple as just a cup of herb tea.
Yeah.
Or it could be, I really need to go out to Kennesaw Mountain and I need to hike it out. I need to get outside. I do crave outdoor time.
Yeah.
It's probably about as big as my practice, even if it's just going around the dog park, taking the dogs on a walk and seeing a little blue sky and some fresh air.
Yeah, I feel you with that one.
Yeah.
I think like being outside is almost more than yoga for me.
Really, yeah.
Like walking and just touching trees and like being in the stillness.
Being up at the river. I love the water. I'm a big water person, so I'd say if water is involved in being outside, like being at a river or a lake, or just being around water, a swimming pool even, you know, apartment swimming pool in the summer. That's hugely therapeutic for me.
Yeah. It's amazing. I think it's really cool when you can kind of figure that out.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy for me to think that when I lived in the city, it was so rare that, I guess I live in a city now, but when I lived in Calgary, they don't have, like, a lot of green space in the city.
Right.
And we were an hour from the Rocky Mountains, but
Yeah.
we went to, like, maybe once a month.
Right.
Like, it was just constantly, like, noise, traffic, concrete jungle,
Yeah.
like, going to the gym a lot with, like, fluorescent lights, and, like, I only practiced yoga, like, 2 or 3 times a week at that point. And it's so interesting that since living in the mountains, I've had this whole flip in my life where if it's, like, a week and I'm not outside, I'm like,
Yeah, you kind of start itching. Honestly, I just thought that it's probably another reason I didn't move to Kuwait. As much as I love, like, the Middle Eastern culture and everything, it's such, if you're not in the city, you're pretty much dead. It's desert, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't think I could have sustained as happy or as quality of a lifestyle over there for as long.
Yeah.
Because I need my green space. And
Yeah,
I
I
need my
feel ya.
water. And
It's interesting because desert is, like, technically nature,
yeah.
but it's, like, and I don't know, there's probably somebody who takes comfort in kind of, like, walking,
The
you know.
solace of the empty desert, yeah. I
Yeah,
would
and
want someone
sitting there
nearby to
and-
make sure I didn't dehydrate.
I have a pretty, like,
Yeah.
poor sense of direction, so I think I'd need, like, either
be
not
out
too
there,
far
like,
from my iPhone to tell me
hallucinating.
where it was, or a compass
They
that I
don't
was really
work out there,
confident
trust me. So bad.
with. Siri, how do I get back to the city?
No bars, none.
But yeah, I'm sure there's somebody who takes, like, comfort in that. But it's weird for me to think of the desert as, like, a
Yeah,
space.
we're all drawn to our own particular form of nature that feeds us. And
Yeah. I think that's really cool, though, that it's kind of, like, turning inwards for you is kind of where you find that balance and where you can, like, find the time to, you know, like, manage the things you're doing outside of work and, like, really be there for your fiance and
Yeah.
be present, like, for your dogs even
Oh, yeah.
and that sort of thing.
It has to be, because I'm such a high output person
Yeah.
and I've only learned that in the past few years, that for me, being a high output person, I have to go inward. And maybe other people don't need to as much. You know, maybe they're more naturally introspective, or they more naturally tend towards that lifestyle, and then they're the opposite and they would need to have more output for energy and productivity. But for me, I gotta dial that down, or I will drive myself crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it works for me for sure.
Yeah, I feel you on that one for sure. I think it's interesting. One of the biggest, like, shocks for me teaching yoga is how much energy it actually
I know, it's
takes.
crazy,
It's
right?
like it's so shocking because it's this idea when you're a practitioner, you show up for that 1 hour class.
And if it's, you know, if you kind of work really hard in the class, you feel like you worked hard, but you're still okay for the rest of the day.
Oh yeah,
But if you taught that hour class,
because it's like you know,
Yeah.
there's preparation involved. Like, you know, yoga teachers come in and they seem so flawless and they're just, you know,
Yeah.
guiding you through, but you don't realize, like, you know, there's preparation
Yeah.
and they had to. Sometimes there's the stress of getting there because you're, you know, if you leave 5 minutes late and you hit traffic, then it's like,
you could be late, and yeah,
and like people are relying on you to open the door and to be there and to create
those are all
that,
amazing points. Yeah,
like, yeah, create that space for them. And it's just like a lot of stuff goes into it that, like,
it's not like any other job where there are going to be people there already, and you just call your buddy and say, "I'm stuck in traffic. You know, I'm going to be late." Or, "Can you open the store for me? Are you closer?" There's no one. It's you. It's you. So it's a high level of anticipation of having things go a particular way, because we still work on this fantastic thing called time, and there's
Yeah.
still a schedule, and
Yeah.
it serves a purpose. But yeah, it's hard to take this ancient practice and this ancient wisdom and all the stuff that it stands for, and then throw it into a modern, like, what are we, like the 5th largest city in the States, you know, and throw it into that setting and say, work flawlessly.
yeah,
And
definitely.
that's what we carry when we walk around and do this. And then have that same relative ease. about it as we go about our day.
Yeah. Do you find in general you're a lot happier being like yoga teacher life versus working a corporate job?
Definitely. I'm so much more chill than I used to be, which is saying a lot. I'm so much more into what I need and what those that I really hold dear and really love, and what I can be of best service to them in a non-draining way. You know, I'm just so much more into that. I never thought I'd be saying a lot of these things that I say, because I'm pretty practical.
Yeah.
And this is all very like energetic, and not visual, and not always tangible. But that's how I live now. Yeah. I've kind of taken, with the exception of I do like to be on time, and I do like to, you know, that sort of stuff. I'm not like a free-for-all hippie. But there's nothing wrong with that. That's just not me. Yeah. But I just am happier having less of that, do this, have a high, because it was never enough. I was really, really, really good at what I did, and I can say that, like, just honestly. Yeah. And it was never enough. It didn't matter, like, how high my numbers were. It didn't matter how many records I surpassed. It was always, let's give her something else because we know she'll do it. Mm. And it got to a very abusive point. Yeah. Not only that I put on myself, which was probably more realistic.
It's like the company's like, not like, hey, you've done amazing, like, you know, you can kind of just
I mean, that's just
chill out a bit. It's like holding a treat over a dog's nose and getting them to jump higher each time.
And I loved it. I loved the self-abuse for a while, because it was like, oh, I can do more. I can even do more. I can do more. And just watch, I'll do it. And if someone were to challenge me that I couldn't, then I certainly would, you know? Yeah. And that just becomes such a flogging to yourself and your spirit. And then that's all I did. I barely had time to eat. I barely had time to sleep. Mm-hmm. I had no other balance other than, you know, those few times I'd hit the hotel floor on some rolled up Gaia mat that's like completely deteriorated, that was always in my luggage. Like child's pose, or, you know, a little twist or whatever, that would bring me a little bit of sanity. But there was nothing else that I did. Nothing. Yeah. I might not even eat all day. Sometimes I would just go and drink water. I mean, I can't believe I used to do stuff like that to myself. It sounds so stupid. It's like, why? Why would you do that? That's so stupid.
When you're so wound up, though, I feel like
it's such a rite of passage, too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like, you just get... I mean, it's very, very seldom that I actually, like, legitimately forget to eat. Mm-hmm. But there has been moments where I'm, like, super stressed and I'm fully in something. Like, even, you know, like, a website crashes and I am, like, like, in my computer. And then I'm like, oh, it's, like, 3 and I haven't eaten lunch. Right. I mean, that might happen to me once every, like, 6 months to a year. But
I'm so glad I have this background, though, because it gives me a lot of understanding for the average overworked American that's walking into my class. Because I know what they're going through. I might not know exactly by any means, but to the degree, and I'm the type of person, as you said, like, I need to eat regularly. I have a fast metabolism. If my blood sugar goes, the whole world knows about it, because I'm like growling. I have these signs that I should feed myself regularly, but it's a testament to what an extreme adrenaline fatigue state that I had let myself get to, that I didn't even notice hunger. Yeah. Because normally I would be, like, all over the place and be, like, you know, taking down buildings to get to food, but such a different altered state that I didn't even notice hunger pain in general. I didn't notice. I mean, the countries I was in, we talked about this, but I'd get sick from either food or water or both every single time. It was just a given. I have a sensitive stomach, and I would, you know, be up all night throwing up, probably severely dehydrated, and I was in these really high temps too, where even if you're outside for a little bit, you can dehydrate. Mm-hmm. And I would just work all day like that. And then I'd be like, crazy. I think I'm thirsty. And I'm like, you think? Go drink some water, you insane person. And then typically it wouldn't even be water, it'd be coffee, which is dehydrating. Because I would need another shot of caffeine to bring it.
Yeah, overworked and overcaffeinated. That's like what the state that North Americans are in.
Absolutely.
It must feel like so much better to be in your body now.
Yeah, it is better, but none of my clothes fit. I'm like, where did all this weight come from? No, I was definitely underweight for a while, but it's interesting. I put on muscle, and then I put on something else that's not muscle, and but I'm happier with it. Like, there's days where I definitely go, like, come on, you can be stronger, you could be a little more fit. And I think that's just my personality, where I always want to challenge myself.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I'm okay with it. Like, I would rather know that I don't shoot up caffeine every day and that I drink lots of water and I'm hydrated and I eat healthy than know that I didn't eat for several days, and then I would be so hungry at the end of it that I would just eat way too much and give myself a stomach ache.
Yeah, and feel sick. It's like, what is your body actually getting out of
You don't digest it. You spend all night with like a distended belly in Abu Dhabi, and you're like, hummus! Too much hummus. Chickpea is a way of life. But if you eat too many, there are consequences. There are consequences.
Especially if your belly is completely empty.
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, it's so crazy. I think it's like our society really puts this sort of like image on us that we need to look a certain way.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's hard then when you like put on old clothes and you're like, what? Did this fit?
Absolutely.
Like, I looked like this? Like,
absolutely. And not to, hit on the yoga community as being terrible about this, because it's not necessarily the community, it's the marketing around yoga. But the whole, you have to be a certain type to do yoga well is we see it everywhere, and there's luckily some people that are really busting that myth, that are all different shapes and sizes and have the most advanced practices, and they're just phenomenal yogis in a really non-confronting way. But it is. I mean, one of my favorite yoga teachers that I kind of follow and watch is Catherine Budick, and she's always like, it's just kind of crazy that we walk around in spandex all day and we're in constantly revealing clothing, for the most part, and people expect that to be flawless. Like, we have something near to our skin as women all the time. It's not going to be flawless, It's just not. And she really embraces that, and that it is what it is. You wear the clothes so you can, move about the practice with ease, not so that the skin underneath is flawless.
Which
is
sort of
so
that
hard.
Stigma, though. It's
it is.
Yeah, no, definitely. And there's there's so many different things wrapped around it. And
what is a multi-billion-dollar industry at this point in the West, yoga, just from the the marketing to the classes to the gear. And so that's, of course, it's going to be capitalized on.
Yeah, definitely. And social media has taken yoga to a whole different level, and sex sells.
Absolutely. Yeah, and
unfortunately,
the little candy floss clothes, as I've heard it called, little tiny bras and stuff, and that's not me. You're being realistic with what works for you and your practice. And then I love clothes. They're fun. They're great to get new yoga clothes.
I know.
Get excited about it, but
there's I saw a bathing suit line on Instagram the other day, and it's designed to be practiced in. So
cool.
Yeah, which is
I would totally do that, because I like the water and beach yoga, and
maybe something that's a little bit more
hold me in. I would be like, yes, yoga bikini. I would do that.
Except the thing is that the whole Instagram account now is taking all these girls who have these profiles, and they're making these videos of them doing these handstands and back bends in these bathing suits. So it's taken this really cool piece of activewear and sexualized it.
Yeah.
And there's a certain level of I really believe that people should be free to do what they want to do. And if you love your body and you want to make videos and you want to put it out there and show what you can do it, then go for it. But I think it's really important for people not to, especially people coming out with a teacher training, not to be I have to get Instagram. Okay, now I need to lose weight because I don't look good enough in my yoga clothes.
No one's gonna think I know what
I need to take my top off and just practice in my sports bra because this yogi's doing it.
Yeah.
I think it's finding who you are and
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident saying that I'm not going to make an Instagram video in a bathing suit anytime soon.
Right. But that's
unless I'm like swimming, you know.
True. If you're on a vacation, you're at a beach, you're traveling somewhere, I don't care what I'm wearing, you know, as long as it's not like exposure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's a really good point, though. I also kind of went through this process lately of, I have seen a lot of in the yoga community, certain studios, groups of yogis bashing other studios, groups of yogis, or certain forms of yoga being displayed. It's just, you know, people on Instagram in their bathing suits or whatever and saying, this is not yoga. Basically, who are we to tell them it's not? Is kind of the stance I take. So I like that you brought that up. There's no they. Like, they are doing this. There's just us.
Yeah.
We're all doing yoga. I don't care if you do it because you want your quads to get strong. Yeah. I don't care if you do it because it helps you feel open for a meditation practice. I just don't care what form it comes in. I don't care if you do hot yoga. I don't care if you do yin. I don't care if you do Ashtanga 6 days a week and only take moon days off, or if you practice once a month. You know, if that's your entry point, take it. And I really like that more of us are thinking that way. And thinking everyone together instead of exclusivity.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it kind of takes away from, I think, like, the sort of, like, purpose of yoga so long ago when different people start tearing different people down. And people, I mean... That's
always going to happen to one degree or another because we're human.
Yeah. You know? Like Taylor Swift said it, haters gonna hate.
Yeah, exactly. They sure are.
I love her.
It's how you respond to it.
Yeah, people just will, and it's like just figuring out who you are and kind of moving past it.
Yeah.
Which is not, it's way easier to say that than to do it, but...
It's true. It's hard when you're in the middle of it and you're not being accepted on either side of the equation. You're just kind of free-floating, which we all go through, and kind of free-float and be lonely for a little bit until we find our tribe, our group, and that clicks with us and says and speaks and practices the same things that we do off the mat, not just when we're decked out and ready to go.
Yeah,
that's definitely really big for me too.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Cool. I just have one more question for you, which I've been asking everyone on the podcast.
Yay!
Do you have any advice that you would give Katie starting out like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, that you know now that you didn't know before?
I don't think I would have listened.
You and I are way too similar.
I really don't think I would have, because I resented any form of authority for a long time. I needed to do my own thing.
Yeah.
So I do understand when people are like that.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of how I do.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have necessarily been open to it until it was time for me to learn it in particular. I mean, there's little stuff that I think about every now and then, like, man, if I had only done this earlier in life, I could have been, you know, instead of being 30 now and being, like, starting to chug along and get some momentum, I could be 30, like, traveling the world with yoga, which is sort of my pie-in-the-sky dream.
Yeah.
So I kind of think about that every now and then, but knowing how a decade ago that I was, as you say, if I were to have gone back and given advice, I wouldn't have accepted it, and I wouldn't have in any way thought it would have worked or even been an option.
Yeah, like out of school, had you had someone told you, hey, like you really like movement and you're like very artistic, maybe you should take a yoga teacher training.
I would be like, that's embarrassing. That is literally the most embarrassing thing I've ever heard. Don't tell me what to do, and certainly not stand up in front of people and like tell them to bend and breathe. Like, that's just stupid, you know? There was no connection of that in my mind. Yeah. Sort of how I would have seen it.
Yeah. So you mentioned you want to, I know I said that was the last question, but I want to hear about your plans. Like, where do you see your career in 5 years?
I still have a huge chunk of my heart in the Middle East.
Cool.
I do. I've even had people over there tell me I was like Lebanese in another life. They're like, are you sure you're American? I just have a heart for different cultures, and that one resonated a lot with me. So I would like to go back and do stuff yoga-wise, and not just in the, like, let's do yoga together, but in a let's create community together.
Yeah.
So that it's not in any way exclusive. And in that part of the world, that's my dream, just to get people on the mat, whether you're Christian, Jew, Muslim, whether amidst the Muslim communities, the different factions that exist over there, just do yoga.
Yeah.
Just create an event, do yoga, get some sponsorship, get some media around it, and just see what wants to be soaked up at that point in time. Doesn't have to be big. I don't care if we do anything huge or little, asana-wise. And from there, to see where I could take it. I have a lot of hope in the young people over there. I'm still in contact with a lot of them, and they're just the most brilliant people I can imagine.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of hope for what might happen over there, and hopefully my part in it.
That's awesome. I love that. Cool. Do you have any other pieces of advice or anything?
Not really.
Cool.
Drink tea.
Drink tea. I love
Drink tea
that.
regularly. It's life-saving. It's a beautiful ritual. Drink tea.
Yeah, tea is pretty amazing.
Yeah. Drink lots of tea.
And
stay curious.
herbal teas too.
Yeah. Stay curious. Stay curious about everything from tea on up. Just stay curious and connected. And
Cool.
keep traveling. Set aside little bits of your paycheck so that you can do those things that keep you alive and not stuck.
Yeah,
Stagnation is like the biggest killer of anything, I think.
totally. Death by routine.
That's why I got out of it.
I feel you.
I was dying.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time
Thank
to talk
you.
to me
It's
today.
awesome.
Yeah, this has been amazing.
All right, so that's the interview with full-time Atlanta-based yoga teacher Katie Roll. So for anyone who's in the Atlanta, Georgia, southern U.S. area, check her out at some of the studios that she teaches in the area. I'll put some links to her bio and whatnot on the show notes so that you can find a little bit more about Katie, and hopefully all my fellow yoga teachers out there learned a lot from her. I just think she's so inspiring, and she's so authentic, and she really has a cool journey and a cool path. So hopefully everyone out there enjoyed it. As I said before, check out the show notes. They'll be on www.mbomyoga.com. You can always send me an email with questions, comments, feedback, or if you just want to say hi, I'm always open for that. info@mbomyoga.com. And as always, thanks for listening.